Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, October 17th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about the state of Illinois yet again. In yesterday's video, we talked about the Democratic Party's gerrymander of the state from a 14-3 district that they are expecting to pass with the governor. However, after calls from national Democrats today, there was a proposed map updated and uploaded to the Illinois state legislature, which has a public domain of submitted maps. Now, this map was submitted by an Illinois Democratic operative that comes with representation from the national Democrats. And the reason why they are proposing a new map is because they do not think this goes far enough. And yes, you heard that correctly. Which means that this new map, instead of making it 14-3, would instead make it 15-2. And I'll show you exactly why these concerns came from the higher-ups, because it shows a bluer map all around. Now, there has been some initial criticism, though, about this brand new map, but I do want to just sort of explain the issue as to what these Democrats had with this brand new map in the first place, the 14-3 map versus the 15-2 map. In the 14-3 map, Marie Newman, who actually ousted Dan Lipinski, who was a former Democratic nominee in the state of Illinois, he was a very long-lasting representative, but many Democrats thought that he was not left-wing enough. And in this third district, or the previous district, which Marie Newman had represented, I believe it was also the third district. If we check over in the third, yes, it was. It had a Democratic plus 10 area, but now she's in a district that is only Democrat plus 3. In addition, the 14th district, Lauren Underwood's district, is Democrat plus 2. In the previous history, it was more Republican, but it's still not safe enough for Democrats to be comfortable about this position. And then also, there's an additional district which has a Democratic lean of just plus 2. So Democrats look at this and say, while the map itself may be drawn in a fashion in which Democrats have that advantage in the three districts, and they could win 14-3, given if it is a red wave year, the most likely map will be 11 Democrats to 6 Republicans. And, of course, that is still a gerrymander. 41% of the state voted for President Trump, but because Democrats don't have a locked up position in these seats, national Democrats look at it and say, this is an opportunity for us to lose rather than to gain over the GOP. In this old map, you can see that the map was drawn in a way that Republicans would actually have a good shot at being closer to the Democrats. The 14th district and the 17th district both had Republican leans, which means that if everything went to plan, the Republican Party would have 7 districts and the Democrats would have a total of the remaining 11. They would be able to get above that majority and consequently win enough seats. Right now, however, they have 13-5, but it is possible for Republicans to win 7. In this new map, it is possible for Republicans to win 6. And if everything goes to plan for the Democratic Party, they will only win 3. But for the national Democrats, that is simply not enough. When they see maps in states such as Texas being drawn in a way where Democrats can't make any advancements, they would like to see a very similar thing happen in the state of Illinois. And Politico reporting on it today, saying that Democrats are agonizing over how much to gerrymander the state of Illinois. There have not been calls from Democrats across the state to combat the gerrymander, but instead criticizing certain individual district choices that the Democratic Party made. And if you are wondering, yes, it is possible to make a compliant map that is entirely Democratic, meaning 17-0 districts for the Democratic Party. Many of them could be competitive and probably would be competitive, given that you will be cracking the city of Chicago multiple times through multiple districts, but that is all, up for deliberation and probably wouldn't be passed simply because that would be the most egregious gerrymander that we have seen so far. But then again, this new map and the 14-3 map also can be considered to be one of the most egregious maps that we have seen for the 2022 election cycle. So now that I've told you a bit about why Democrats are a bit upset about this new map, even though it does heavily favor them, we can take a look at this new map that has been under consideration. Now, it has not been proposed by members of the state legislature, and the Democratic Party has not put this forward as an official plan from their political party. But there is something in the state of Illinois where looking at this, they can go ahead and try to adopt the provision that has been chosen. In this case, if it is submitted by someone who is able to submit such a proposal. And it is. And in this new map, because it is 15-2, you can actually see exactly how Democratic these districts are. Many of the ones inside here are extremely, extremely Democratic districts. And then when you take a look at the districts that people were otherwise a bit more competitive or a bit more worried about, you can start to see exactly, how they end up. You can see, certain districts over here that are more in favor of the Democratic Party than they have been in the past. In fact, you can see that only one of them, or two of them actually, are safe Republican districts. Every single one of the remaining ones are pretty good for the Democratic Party. Now, I'm trying to figure out a way to show you the breakdown by partisan lean in terms of the state of Illinois when it comes down to each individual of these district populations and congressional districts. I'm not sure why it's not showing me. Maybe, I rarely ever use Dave's redistricting, and if anyone could guide me in the right direction the next time that I do make a video talking about this. But the point is, I just wanted you to see this map, to see how outrageously gerrymandered the map was in such a fashion that, you are looking at some of the narrowest of district lines drawn down to just the narrowest strips of roads in order to draw different parts of the state into different regions. You are quite literally disconnecting certain regions of the state, all to ensure that Democrats can pick up some of those Republican votes to ensure that they don't end up in a Republican district or make another Democratic district more competitive. Chicago is cracked 10 different ways across the state of Illinois, and the rest of the state is including minuscule parts of very populated cities along with the rest of the farmland, and ultimately it's just a way to prevent the Republican Party from having a good chance at winning any amount of seats in the state of Illinois. And while at first it may seem that you are looking at a map that might be passing by some type of thinking, whatever it might be, I still think that it definitely is worth looking at this 15-2 map, because it actually is a bit safer for the Democratic Party to adopt such a measure, because that initial discussion from the top Democrats that it is possible that 6 Republicans win is absolutely true. But with this new map, it would make it increasingly more difficult for the GOP to end up winning. Now, there actually has been some criticism of the 14-3 map here. You can see that Dave Wasserman, who is actually the owner of DRA, he goes by Redistrict on Twitter. I've been using him for quite some time now to understand a bit more about redistricting and the process itself. And he says that Illinois Democrats have gone out of their way to make their gerrymander less efficient. As proposed on the left, it would be close enough to be toss-ups in 2022. But then he proposes some slightly different choices to make the 14 out of 17 districts Biden plus 10 or more. But instead of going about that pathway that Dave Wasserman is suggesting, the National Democratic Party is opting to go for a more egregious gerrymander, enough to make it 15 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And if you don't exactly get what those numbers actually end up out to, you can see that Donald Trump received 41% of the vote in the state of Illinois in the 2020 election, and Joe Biden received 58%. That should roughly translate to the amount in the House, typically speaking, but because this is a gerrymander, 14 divided by 17, which would be the number of Democratic districts, gives you 82% Democratic representation compared to 58% overall Democratic representation in the presidential election. But this new map would be even worse. 15 divided by 17 brings you to 88% of the seats representing Democratic support, representing the Democrats in the United States House of Representatives from the state of Illinois. And if you want to take a look at what 2 out of 17 seats means, it effectively gives the Republican Party 11.7% in terms of overall representation, because Democrats want to prevent them from having a good map. Dave Wasserman sort of comes out against this map in a very similar fashion to what the National Democrats have been saying. In fact, he says that a GOP strategist called him that afternoon and joked to him that there must have been a Republican mole in the Illinois Democrats' map drawing room, saying that this map, as best said by a DC Democratic consultant, saying that if you're going to make it that ugly, at least make it more effective. When I take a look at the way that these maps have been drawn, this new proposed map, I understand that it has been built in such a way that Democrats will likely win these seats, but the fact that Republicans are within striking distance should be a bit alarming, because 2022 truly could go their way, and Democrats actually might end up being in a worse position than when they started in the state of Illinois. Maybe not necessarily in the long run, but if Democrats truly want to do stuff with Joe Biden's administration and his agenda, they need to ensure that 2022 can go their way. But in the 14th district and in the 17th district, this is why you see, and in the 3rd district, this is why you see Democrats trying to potentially redraw their new map in a way that would be more convenient and more beneficial for the Democratic Party. And that's exactly what this 15-2 map does. It has been proposed by Zach Kautsky. He is a DC operative focused on the state of Illinois, and this was his exact map. I mean, it is quite fascinating to see just how gerrymandered the state of Illinois can get ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. It's already come to a point where Adam Kinzinger has already said that he is likely not to run for re-election, sort of pointing out that he might run for additional office. When you're a sitting representative, the easiest thing you can do is run for re-election, but that's not the case for him. I think he's realized that his time has come to an end because the Democratic Party doesn't want to risk his possibility of being primaried and wants to ensure that they have that seat solidified up if they don't have a Republican in office that will be benefiting them or will be siding with them. And even them, Adam Kinzinger really never sided with the Democratic Party beyond Trump's impeachment. I think that was something that the Democratic Party also realized, that they'd rather have a Democrat than any type of Republican simply based on the issue alone. That Republicans probably wouldn't vote with the Democratic Party if Donald Trump was not in office. I think that impeachment vote was largely because Adam Kinzinger was no longer afraid of President Trump, and now it looks like he's going to be unable to run for re-election. And it looks like there might be an additional representative that is also unable to run for re-election if this new map passes. And we can see here that J.B. Pritzker okayed the legislative maps back in September of 2021. Now, these are not the same as the House of Representatives maps. He sort of said that the legislative maps, meaning they decide the state legislature, were okay, even though there was a lot of heavy criticism from those, even though, there were members of the media and both political parties saying that this map should not have passed. He decided to follow through with it, even though he promised not to back during the 2018 governor election in the state of Illinois. So he defied his constituency, defied his own campaign promise to okay these legislative maps, and it looks like people are still expecting these new legislative maps to pass in the House of Representatives for the state of Illinois. There is wide expectation that Democrats, with their sole control over this process, will draw the maps in such an unfair manner for the Republican Party and will ensure that these districts only get bluer. And honestly, I'm not surprised in the least bit. The Democratic Party has been very big recently on combating fire with fire, which is why Democrats might be agonizing over such a position. I think there is still going to be many calls from members inside the Democratic Party saying that this is ultimately the wrong way to go. The Democrats should not be doing such a egregious gerrymander, especially in a state like Illinois, which actually had a Republican governor between 2010 and 2018. I mean, it is quite fascinating to see that Illinois used to have some type of major Republican legislative body or major Republican control across the state in terms of the governor's mansion, but now that they have neither, the Democratic Party is taking advantage of that. They are going to try to effectively take Illinois and make it the Republican Party's Texas, or North Carolina, which used to have 10 Republican representatives and 3 Democratic representatives, and they are trying to counteract the possibility of that map returning. Because maps such as that one, and ones that the Democratic Party has had to deal with for the past 10 years, have really, I think, put them in a position where they will take an opportunity that they can get. This is not necessarily new, but because you are starting to see many of these states gerrymander in such a way that Democrats will not be in a powerful position for 2022 or even in a competitive position, Democrats will return to their states and combat it in full force. The only major difference here is that in terms of the national overview, the Republican Party has control of over 100 seats more than what the Democratic Party has control over, which is honestly quite unfortunate for the Democratic Party, but very beneficial for the GOP. So even if Illinois does end up going in a way that is, not good for the Democratic Party, not good for the Republican Party, they can counteract that in some of their more individual states, such as Georgia, Arizona, Texas, all states where the governing body, the Republicans there, have complete and utter control over how the states are drawn. Ohio included, which you can actually see one of the new proposed maps that might also explain further why Democrats seem to be upset with the current state of the redistricting cycle. When you take a look at all of these districts that are deemed to be competitive, only one of them are considered to be Democratic leaning, and based off this new map, it looks like at most Democrats could win 5 seats, but more likely than not, Republicans will win that majority and will likely win, if it is a red wave year, a total of 11 districts out of 15. And in a normal year, I truly expect it to be instead a number of 10 districts and 10 Republican districts and 5 Democratic districts. But I think, all around here, what we see in states such as Ohio are being combated actively in a state such as Illinois. And if this map passes, whether the new one or the old one being this first Democratic plan and the new one being this one that I've been showing you on DRA, regardless, Democrats will likely end up in an advantageous position in the state of Illinois later on down the line, or potentially in 2022. But this 15-2 map just made matters a lot worse for Democrats across the state of Illinois, because it sort of pointed out some of their biggest flaws in their old map, yet added in an additional Democratic seat. And I'm sure they will be very happy to see something like this and might end up adopting it on Monday or Tuesday or making their own version of a 15-2 map, because it is legally possible to make a 17-0 map in the state of Illinois, which means that this 15-2 map really should not be shocking to many people by the end of it. I think overall it's just a very fascinating experience to see how districts can be drawn in such an interesting fashion, and they will tell us a lot about the 2022 midterm elections and how certain seats by default will end up being the more competitive seats or the more safer seats in which we can predict otherwise previously toss-up districts in the column for the Republicans and the Democrats. So much comes from the redistricting process, and it will tell us a lot for 2022, and I am so excited to see them all finalized by the end of the year or middle to late next year. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.